Good afternoon, everyone. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. I'm not sure if you can hear the flyovers here in the city of Baltimore and downtown. My goodness, this show is about mental health. If I think better, I do better. We have a very special show for you today. Just want to take a moment and pause for the people who do live in a war zone. I could not imagine living in a war zone. Right now, in other places in the world, there are hot spots. And to hear these planes going over, my God, the sound is deafening. With us today is our fearless leader, the one, the only, Ben McCormick. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, brother Donnie. I'm enjoying some festivities with my parents. So forgive me, I'm down south. I don't have my computer. I got my phone, but that's what technology does for you. So I've got the small screen. I apologize, but I'm here. So it's good to see you. It's good to have our folks who are listening for the first time or have been following us, and I'm grateful for you all.
So, Ben, you've been in the military. You've heard these loud planes before. You've heard the zoom.
Yeah, it's what is it called? Flyby week, Donnie?
Fleet week.
Fleet week, yeah, Fleet week. It's an exercise in the military in the area to show capabilities and stuff like that. But yeah, I have been in the military, and I remember, the planes flying over the C-130, C-141s, as well as the jets coming out of Pope Air Force Base in Andrews. So yes, sir, it's deafening.
So speaking of the military, speaking of, it leads us to, generally speaking, violence and some of the matters that go on, not just in Baltimore, but in any city. And we have a very special guest today on a very special mission. When you think about the city of Baltimore, under the leadership of Mayor Brandon Scott, one of the youngest mayors in America. I've said it a couple of times over the past 2 weeks. He doesn't get credit for some things. One, the squeegee kids. I think he's done a remarkable job. We don't even hear about it. We don't see it much anymore. If anything, we have other people on the corner. But in the sense of living in a city, things happen. Violence, and somebody has to deal with it. A part of the mayor's job is to help lead and guide and provide services. Today we have Mr. Mark Mason. He's with the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement. Mr. Mark Mason, welcome to the show.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Dedicated to the co-production of public safety in all of Baltimore's neighborhoods, MONSE partners with Baltimore's residents, community-based organizations, institutions, businesses, and agencies to stem the tide of violence while simultaneously unearthing its root causes. Wow, that's a lot. Man, how do you even remember MONSE? I mean, that's quite a name. I'm glad they abbreviated it.
Yeah. My past director big on acronyms, right, and kind of naming things, and kind of breaking down some of those long titles. So you can credit her with that brilliant acronym.
So sometimes things happen, and one of the entities that you partner with is Like-Minded Institutions. New Life Recovery Center right here on St. Paul Street is a very important place. Ben, you want to take the lead?
Well, I want to take the opportunity to say to our folk that I've been very fortunate. I use the term blessed, but we got some folks over here that don't, that may be offensive. But I'm very grateful to be partnered with Mark and MONSE, and had the opportunity to see firsthand what they do. First of all, what his passion is. Second of all, because I believe leadership, as I've seen it in times I was in the military and the times since I've been in the private sector, leadership is very important, because what happens below you comes from the stage that you set, the behavior that you set, and examples that you set as a leader. So what I've seen in Mr. Mason is he's very dedicated to the cause and wanting to help people. Let me say that first. And then, interestingly enough, he's in a bureaucracy and has to manage the attitudes and the policies within the bureaucracy in order to effectively get that done. And I've been able to watch him, and I'm very pleased at what he does, not just for us, because before I had a chance to link up with Mark in terms of being able to be a partner with New Life, MONSE and New Life, I had a chance to watch him just walk, with the brothers. We Are Us. He's a part, and he'll tell you that, and just do what he does in the community. I was like, wow, I need to be a part of that brother and what he's doing. So I've been fortunate enough to be able to get him aside, tell him who we are, what we do, have him come down to our facility, and as they say, the rest is history. So, Mark, I want to tell you, man, I applaud what you do, how you guys get that done, you and your full team, because you just don't set people up and walk away. You set them up, and you come back and you do the reviews. You make sure that they're doing what it is that is expected of them, which a lot of people don't do. I'm partnered with a few other people. That's the last thing on their mind is to come back and revisit. We gave them to you, so I want to applaud that, man. And, if you just would share with the audience what it is that you do, what your vision is in order to affect what you believe needs done as the the director over at MONSE Victim Service.
I appreciate it. I want to first, give those accolades back, Ben, because team effort, this is something that, we sat down, over communicated, right, and found ways to be able to plan to how effective we can be better at serving, our victims. So again, it's a team effort. This is something that we have worked closely with you to come up with a plan to be able to do that. So I send those accolades right back to you. I think from a perspective of the work, right, and I think the vision and the mission, being in the work and being in the field for, a very short 8 years, but it kind of seems like 18, right? Because of the amount of work that you have to actually put in to it, and the time that you actually have to put into it. That I've actually been able to move through trial and error, right? And it's not trial and error saying that we are putting individual lives, at a certain point or in a certain jeopardy by going trial and error, but you have your good and your bad, and you learn from your bad, right? And I think overall the experience that I have had in being able to hear feedback from the families, truthful feedback, right, honest feedback about how we can actually do things better, has allowed us to kind of move and progress in the manner that we have. So just an overall vision of supporting my mayor, right, Brandon Scott was an exceptional leader. You spoke on leadership, and I have a level of leadership in my role in leading services, but seeing my leader's vision, mayor, and actually how dedicated he is to the well-being of these not just victims but constituents in this city, um, motivates me even more. You talk about leadership and you talk about what you, and when you actually see your leader actually being in the right, um, it motivates you, right? It gives you a different purpose because that that somebody actually has the same intent, and that's to save Baltimore City.
Mark, Donnie, if you don't mind. So, Mark, I had the opportunity to come down and be a part of the city council's meeting for the budget for MONSE, and I had never sat in on that. It was very interesting, Donnie. If you don't mind, Mark, what not get into a lot of detail in that budget meeting. Do you believe that the city council? Because without getting to a lot of politics, because people are people. People have emotions. I believe, just my experience, that there's some city council members who may favor different departments for whatever reason. That's real because people are human. Do you believe that you guys are going to have any issues with getting the budget that you need at MONSE to continue the mission, right, to help Baltimore citizens?
I hope so. I do. I hope so. We have some very really sustainable relationships with some city council members. But you know, we are at the disposal, or at the should I say, at the helpfulness of any council member that reaches out, right?
Right.
So any council member that reaches out and actually needs us to step in and do any type of work in the city, we are do it. But again, I'm hoping that based off of the work that we, as a unit, as an entire agency, exhibit right across all of the city, right? We have our CNO lane, community engagement and outreach, that are doing multiple community neighborhood stabilization responses at a time, right? In different parts of the city. Some of these come at a request for by some of the council members. Some of them come at a request from BPD. Some of them come at a request from even constituents in the city that are concerned about some possible criminal activity that are happening in the city. Even if some of these things that align with GBRS, like MONSE responds, right? A dynamic CB&I lane, community violence intervention lane, right? Where you have a gun violence prevention lane that works and does technical assistance and support with the Safe Street sites that are doing dynamic across the city, saving lives, um, ending violence. You see, you know, it's all been broadcast across the news that the homicide rate is down. Goodness gracious, I believe the lowest it's ever been since the 1950s, I believe.
Yeah.
Something, I mean, it's been extremely low. And, like that's just not only, Monzi, right, actually stepping in, but it's a collaborative effort between all of the cities coming together, State's office, all of the agencies playing a part and stepping in under his leadership to make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to do as a response to violence, so that we find a way to counter it. So, like I said, I mean, I am hoping and praying that our work just kind of speaks for itself, so that in turn, that can initiate whatever decisions that the council to support our budget request.
Hey, Donnie, I had the good pleasure, and Mark touched on something that so everybody doesn't bring the truth to journalism like Donnie Glover does. And you said something, Mark, that was very important, and I don't want to miss that. So Baltimore City has had its lowest homicide rate in decades, right? So one of the things that happened last year out in Brooklyn was the shooting. It got a lot of airtime over the time that it happened, and then for like several weeks after. And what a lot of people don't know, Donnie, is that Mars Group stepped in. They planted roots between them and BPD. And Mark, I want you to touch on this. They haven't had a homicide in that area, Donnie, in a year, right? So Monty went back, I think it was last week or week before, and they had a celebration. They had an event, and I was able to go out there. It was primarily targeted to the Latino community, and it was wonderful, man. And they had some embassy representatives from Guatemala that were out there. And Mark, if you don't mind, just touch a little bit on that event and how you guys were sponsoring that.
I appreciate that. Thank you. So the tragic event happened in Brooklyn. The mayor called us directly and assigned us to stabilization. And I think the honorable thing of the city is that when though the mayor actually put us in charge, every agency kind of came and supported, right? Which was us, looking in the direction, hoping for. So it wasn't like you had an agency that felt like they weren't. Everybody came up and supported. I know that I normally last 45 days. And people question over and over again, about what are you all going to do after the 45 days. But what a lot of don't know is that our initial support lasts for 45 days. However, the interim, what we try to do is be stakeholders together, bring um, together, bring other agencies together, council together, and that's what we need, bi-weekly stakeholder meeting. That bi-weekly stakeholder meeting allowed us to kind of touch on all of the concerns that were being from the about safety, about things that may be cleaned up, traffic wise, safety concerns going back and forth to school, and started doing this bi-weekly stakeholder meeting. It was something brought up to me in that meeting. We actually worked as an entire there were concerns that certain populations weren't being and addressed. For example, uh, like our initial response was to start with the victims. So the meeting was there for let's say several months to allow for families to come together and get all their needs addressed. I can't speak more highly about some of those things. For example, Department of Social Services, the governor actually assigned them directly to recipients of they were processed back in the food site, right? Which was something that probably would never, in my lifetime, I would never see something like that happening. But seeing the effort of the agents, services on site, state attorney's office, services, Baltimore Police Department, Victim Services, I mean, right there, helping with relocation, helping to navigate services, helping to find move to a different population, move to a different town hall where the people were actually getting their own family. And we had youth members in the community, in the audience, able to write down their concerns, ask questions directly to those people. We had people asking about the how to address the older adult. So we actually had an older adult weekly affair and actually had go to kind of cap off the meeting where the gentleman came out. I believe before the came out, participated with the older adults. Kept everyone feeling part of the community and do something together.
Mark, let me just jump in for a second. Ben, can you hear him?
No, I can't hear him. I can't. Maybe every 2 or 3 words, Mark. It's probably the area that you're in.
Oh,
We,
okay.
we can't hear you very well.
Yeah, and I thought it would go away, but it's not going away. And
Okay.
listen, what you're saying is very important, and I know that you're traveling in a northern direction because you have a destination to get to. And Donnie, I don't know what to do about that because I don't want him to leave and try and log back on. Is it possible we can have him on another day where he's a little bit more, close to?
I tell you what we can do.
Sure.
We can do audio.
Okay. You want to call in, Mark?
Yeah, I can call in.
I'll
Yeah.
call you, Mark. Just pick up.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Brian.
Okay. What did you hear him saying, Ben?
I didn't hear more than I heard.
Right.
So,
I don't want to give
no. Listen, we want to give the audience, right, the substantive and the content based on what people are saying, and we want to keep the audio and the visual, as good as possible, man, so folks can get. Otherwise, why am I listening to this? They can't even get that. We don't want that. So that's a good call. Call him up. Let's get him on audio because I knew he was traveling, but he was still willing to do the show.
Okay. So, Mark, can you hear us? Okay.
Yes, I can hear.
This is a lot better. So, could you give that answer again?
I want to hear him do that.
Say it again, Mark.
The 45-day response for Brooklyn?
Yep. Yes. One second, Mark. Can you hear him okay?
No, turn it up as loud as you can because I can hardly hear you.
Okay, Mark, let's try it again.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So as far as the mayor actually assigned us the lead role in managing the stabilization and the victim response in the Brooklyn community after the incident. And it was just, really, uh, it was really a great moment to be able to have all of the city agencies come and be a part of, what we were trying to do in support of that community, without, one agency feeling like they, didn't get as much shine as the next one. So it was extremely commendable to see all these agencies pull together and actually set up a stabilization in that community center where we had, a mental health agency right at the door to be able to handle anyone who actually needed mental health supports. We had housing authority there taking immediate applications for possible relocation for families that were affected, and even for families that were, not just physically affected, but, psychologically affected. We had the Department of Social Services. I'm so grateful for the governor to actually send up the social services to be able to be on hand, not just to hand out flyers and information, but they were there actually processing SNAP benefits on the spot, which was actually huge. We had our agency, Victim Services Lane, right alongside Baltimore Police Department Victim Services, as well as the State's Attorney's Office Victim Services there to support any victim that walked into that building with any type of support that they actually need. We worked our way around the room. You had Mayor's Office of African American Engagement there for any young person that needed any type of support. You had the War Center there helping with any landlord issues or any supports around mental health for victims, as well as legal supports. You had the Office of Emergency Management with previous lead, which was led by the now Chief of Fire Department, Chief Wallace, that did an amazing job just kind of navigating how we actually manage all those support services there. Even Baltimore Crisis Response being there for on-scene, on-site crisis intervention. We had Baltimore City Public Schools. We had Mayor's Office of Children and Family Success. And most importantly, you had the organizations Left Thrive Baltimore and Moms Demand Action there every single day, engaging the young people as the parents actually were able to go around and find their supports. Moms Demand Action and Let's Thrive Baltimore were there to engage the young people in arts and crafts and all different types of things to be able to, kind of have them occupied so that the parents could get what they needed. So, it was an amazing event. And again, we were being questioned in the beginning about, because our initial stabilization is, 45 days. People were saying, well, what's going to happen after 45 days, which is what led us to doing bi-weekly stakeholder meetings, where every month we actually met and had an event to meet every population that needed to be addressed in that Brooklyn community. And just to bring awareness, we are actually doing an anniversary on July 2nd. It's a day of remembrance and healing that MONSE will be leading with a number of different agencies in the city and partner organizations, where we're going to be doing a setup of people actually coming into a healing village to be involved in healing circles, yoga, meditation, some other things. They're going to have resources there on the spot where Mayor's Office of Employment Development are going to be doing on-site interviews, helping people with their resumes. And we have about 7 businesses, local businesses locked in that are going to be doing on-site interviews right there for employment. We're going to have some gift giveaways from some of our partners from For My City that are going to be giving food away. We have some Amazon giveaways that can be given away as well. But most importantly, we're going to have a kids village where the young people we're partnering with Bolo to actually do sports activities for the young people out in Brooklyn.
What is Bolo?
So Bolo is, I don't know, what the acronym means, but it's a sports company that is they're stationed in the Hope McHenry area down where I'll have to find, I'll get back to you all what it means, but it's a sports company that actually does all different types of activities for not just young people, but older adults as well. Kickball tournaments, volleyball games, basketball games, just year-round engagement in sports. So I'm sorry, Donnie, I don't have it, but I'll
No, that's fine. So Mark, and not to be a stickler, but you got to help me out here. Are we providing these wraparound services to Brooklyn just in response to the horrible incident, or is this something that we should be doing all the time, or that we are doing all the time?
Yes, that's the thing. We are doing it all the time. Obviously, it has been projected, from the news and from the media that what we have been doing in Brooklyn Brooklyn. But this is something that we do across the city. MONSE as an agency has many different lanes that actually do a number of different things in response to supports around the city. My lane is actually running victim services, so anyone that has been a victim of a crime can be referred into us by any partner agency, or even themselves, that they actually need supports, that we'll step in and see what it is that we can do to help help them rebuild and help them recover from their trauma. But we have a community engagement lane that actually does 45-day neighborhood stabilization. We are stationed in a community that has been affected by violence or just needs. Somebody may complain about some things happening in that community, where we bring a peace bus out to offer different resources, employment resources, victim services resources, anything that they would need in that community. We actually come and, provide that service. So, it's not being a stickler. It's just that because Brooklyn is so high profile, people are only hearing about the things that we are doing in Brooklyn. However, we're doing this across the city, Don.
Well, if I can be selfish, can I ask you about Sandtown? I live in Sandtown.
Absolutely. And listen, I'm from West Baltimore, right? Like that's my stomping ground. That's my home. And one benefit about MONSE relocating, we actually are now in the Sandtown area, Ashburton area. We actually share a space with Church House. They've been really great neighbors to us, great support. But we are now in West Baltimore, so we are actually going to. I believe we are engaged in a 45-day stabilization right now. However, we are going to do a resource fair right outside of our building to serve anyone in that neighboring community that actually need resources. We have partners in the Sandtown community. That's why Baltimore just did a healing garden event right there, where we were actually there to partner with them. So we are in several different neighborhoods, via our partners. For example, like New Life may be stationed somewhere, but if New Life encounters someone that actually needs assistance, Ben knows that we are a phone call away that he can actually reach out for. And same with some of our partner agencies, and that's the good thing about building relationships with these community-based organizations that are embedded in the community, because if they are there, that means that MONSE is there.
So take me through what MONSE does about trauma. Clearly, Brooklyn was a traumatic event. Clearly, anyone who has been a victim of crime is dealing with trauma. What's it like? What's a day like in your 9 to 5?
Yeah. So one thing that we do from a victim services perspective is we try to elevate the need for mental health as to a high enough level where we know that we can't force mental health on anyone, but we try to do our best to advocate for the importance of having mental health supports, right, to be able to recover from the trauma that someone has experienced. So one thing that we do when we enroll families in is that, while we're talking about all the supports that we can actually provide, we can help them relocate. We can get them connected to employment, and even, see if we can actually give them employment opportunities. We can help them with transportation. We can help them with school supports, which is something else that, and I'll come back to that. But one thing that I am big on, not just with the mental health, but supporting young people that have been exposed to trauma, because what happens is that when these young people experience trauma, they go back into the school and don't feel free and open to be able to share with anyone. So they may actually, come off different, right? I'm not going to say misbehaving.
Yeah, they're repressing it. They've never dumped.
Yes. Yeah. So their actual behavior and their response to their trauma might be misconstrued. And we have to make sure that we get there to intervene, so that the staff knows that this young person isn't just misbehaving. They have experienced trauma and they need to be handled with care. So that's something that we do that I speak highly of, that I feel like us as a unit does extremely well with. But one thing that we push across the board is the importance of mental health. And I remember when I first got into the role as an advocate, I remember reaching out and saying, hey, listen, one thing that we, try to encourage you all to do is to kind of, get involved in mental health. And, back then, maybe about 7 or so years ago, when I was an advocate, people were like, oh, okay, well, I'll let you know. But ironically, over the past couple of years, when I mentioned mental health, those individuals have said, yes, I need it. I'm open to it.
And you mean counseling, mental health counseling?
Absolutely, mental health counseling, yes. So that's been a blessing now that we don't have to, try to coerce, people to join mental health. They are more open and wanting to engage even more than we wanted to. But one thing that we kind of, convey to them when we're having this conversation is you have to realize and understand that our body and our mind always doesn't process trauma immediately, right? We don't know that something that doesn't affecting us, or we may not realize that something that may not be affecting us right now, immediately when we've experienced this trauma, may turn around and affect us by, setting off a trigger in us 6 months or 7 months later down the line. So what we don't want to do is have them not have those tools from mental health counseling, right? From different type of supports in place, because what they don't want to do is, let's say that we help a family get employment, right? Which leads to us actually helping them get relocated. They get into their house, they begin working, they're doing, having a great progression, right? Great stabilization, great time progressing, and something at that job triggers them, right?
And snap.
If they actually don't have some of those tools,
yes,
that have been taught from a mental health perspective, right, to be able to fall back on, like, it may send them down a negative hill, more or less. So let's say, you might get into an incident at work because you were triggered, right? You don't realize that the trigger came from your past trauma.
Yes.
That might wind up getting you suspended, right? Which might wind up, having you lose your job. Then in turn, guess what? You don't know how to pay your rent. So then it starts a negative trickle down effect, when, some of those things can be avoided if you are already open and able to have those tools, back when you first started the program.
Let me just jump in here. When you mention the young people, what's particularly coming to mind is how, if a young person acts out in school,
yeah,
considering previous administrations got rid of 75% of the teachers and principals, actually the principals, the big mamas who got me, you, and Vin through school.
Wow, yeah.
So this new group of teachers comes into Baltimore City, and quite often they put our young people on Ritalin. That's what I'm getting to. They misdiagnose. They're not understanding that this young person has been traumatized.
You said it. You said it. Misdiagnosed. Yeah.
Also, what comes to mind too, Mark, is I know we started off talking about Brooklyn, and again, this was one of the previous administrations. But when Freddie Gray happened, the first thing that came to my mind was lining up Winnebagos up and down North Avenue, up and down East Monument Street, West North Avenue, East Monument Street, and put some counselors in there. The whole community was traumatized.
The whole community was traumatized.
And nobody addressed that back then. So then I'm particularly proud to hear that we are growing and we are removing person by person the stigma of getting mental health therapy, counseling.
Well, that's absolutely true. And Mark, he alluded to it moments ago. And you know this, Donnie, because we're all around the same age, that many of our folk who had trauma years ago from what was going on in their household and then in their neighborhoods, based on the society's politics and racism and things like that. We had some trauma. I suffered some trauma from I was jumped by some Caucasians when I was 12 years old, right? I was living in Lakeland. You know what Lakeland is, right? Patapsco and up from Westport, right? And about 6 Caucasian guys, they wanted my bicycle. And I wouldn't give it to them, and they jumped me, man, and they beat me up, and they took my bicycle. And I'm gonna tell you something. I still think about that today, and I share about that when I go. But anyway, so I didn't know what to do with it other than go to my parents and cry, huh?
I get it. That's traumatic. And
yeah.
So your point here on this show where we deal with if I think better, I do better, is that we have to be able to address past trauma.
Absolutely.
Dig out that cancer.
Absolutely.
Fully address it so that we can move on. You agree, Mark?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That past trauma has to be dug out. Yes.
Yeah, because undiagnosed trauma has the ability to do many, many things to the person themselves initially, and to it can cause collateral damage in your family and relationships. And I can think of many situations of undocumented trauma in my clients and even in myself. And I won't go into no detail because I've been fortunate enough to kick coke and dope for 24 years, but that came as a result of something that happened early on when I was small. Not that situation, but I never was able to address. But anyway, so there's documentation.
I want you to know, you're nailing it.
Yeah.
I thought about this just not long ago, that growing up in West Baltimore, in East Baltimore, I remember flag projects.
Yeah.
There were cats with Uzis on every tier, on every floor, in the stairwell.
Yeah.
Growing up seeing heroin and cocaine, and of course we were a little older as the crack epidemic unfolded, but seeing drugs being sold on a corner, you think of The Wire, the show, what it captured is a lot of undiagnosed trauma. Would you agree, Mark?
Absolutely. And one thing that you don't hear too much, right? And I commend Ben and New Life for this is, you don't hear too much conversation around empowerment, right? We talk about trauma and resiliency, and you always hear those certain words, but I think one of the most important ways of encouraging stability, right, is empowerment. So when you start empowering people, right, and you actually show them that you are there and your ultimate goal is to see them empowered, everything else falls in place. So when you think about that empowerment, the empowerment is important because we've grown in a type of society in the community where all you see is failure, right? That's all you see growing up, right? So you are thinking, hey, I can make it, right? They aren't expecting to be able to make it. So if we as agencies, organizations, and community leaders are able to push more empowerment, you will see a drastic change in it. I grew up in West Baltimore, right? There was a point where I didn't think I was going to make it out. But there was always maybe 3 or 4 individuals that came to me, right, by the grace of God, and I don't want to, get too religious, but, God presents someone powerful in your life every now and again, right? It doesn't have to be all at one point, but when you reach those crossroads, you wind up having somebody there that's going to kind of guide you, in the right direction. Because just like Ben said, I always tell everybody that basketball saved my life, right? And I felt like growing up in West Baltimore, I walked on a fence. So you know how when you walk on the top of that fence, you have one side and you have another side, right? I could have fell to either side. But by the grace of God, I was always pushed and tilted to that correct side, right? I'm not going to say the correct side, but the side that, had less trauma, should I say, Donnie? Had less trauma that kind of encouraged me to kind of stay, on the right path, because I knew that, or somebody knew, should I say, that I needed to be placed in this role where I am so that I can go back and make sure that I save as many lives as I possibly can.
What I wanted to add is that I can't empower you, Mark, but I can help empower you. If I'm going to help empower you, you have to be willing. I have to be willing to receive the help.
That's a great point.
So when you talk about empowerment and empowering our people, we're talking about counseling, we're talking about education, we're talking about employment. What about mediation, violence mediation? A lot of times, we may have an issue with a neighbor who is not acting right. What can a person do? What can we do to help you help us?
So that's one of the great things about Safe Streets, right? When you think about Safe Streets and conflict mediation, there are a lot of great brothers that work in Safe Streets that are embedded in these streets that want to make sure that there is a way that someone doesn't have to move at a point where they feel like they have to, revert to violence or, be afraid of a certain situation. So if we have support from Safe Streets in some of these areas, if someone is being exposed to something like that where they want, to kind of have somebody come in and mediate a situation, or they're worried about something, they can contact us. They can contact the Safe Street site anonymously, right, and say, hey, listen, I'm having a situation. Is there any right way that somebody can come in and help me kind of get through? We have different community-based organizations that focus on some of those things, right? Community-based violence interventions programs that you can reach out to say, hey, I'm having this situation, an issue. Is there any way that somebody can kind of step in and help and assist? So those are some options. And again, just maybe reaching out, and even if it's something that Ben knows this, even if it's something that we can't do, we're going to look to see if we can get somebody connected to a service that can help them with their needs.
Another thing that comes to mind in our communities, as you know, America has 5% of the world's incarcerated, 5% of the world's population, but we have 25% of the world's incarcerated persons. East Baltimore, West Baltimore, people leaving Jessup House of Corrections, Patuxent Institute for the Criminally Insane, Penitentiary, so on and so forth. They come back to our neighborhoods. What role does the community play, does the returning citizen play in keeping them from going back to jail? We have a 70% recidivism rate.
It's funny because, I was able to experience it firsthand, right? I had an older brother that was extremely popular in the community, right? That actually, he went to jail for 8 years. He went to Hagerstown for 8 years. I remember him being around when I was younger, but I remember him, going away. And when I was younger, my parents told me that Ricky was going to camp, right? So his friends in the community would always come and knock on the door and be like, mind you, they knew he was locked up. They knew he was away, but they would always get a kick out of coming and asking me, yo, Mark, where Rick at? Right? And I'd be like, Ricky going to camp. Ricky going to camp, right? So they would get a kick out of that, right? But, seeing him come home, right, and actually being my hood hero because he was everybody else's hood hero, right? All the drug dealers, everybody in the community, they love Rick. He could play basketball, but he suffered from mental health and substance abuse issues, right? So I saw the recurrence of him actually being enabled because he wasn't able to cross that threshold of, making it through, with psychologically, right? Obviously, he could work any job. He can work a warehouse job. He could work anywhere. But I remember having, my dad being in our life and making us walk downtown almost every day to go and look for jobs. In order for, him to actually stay at the house, he had to be actively looking for employment. I saw him walk down, and every day we were going to different stores. We were going to different warehouses. We were going to all these different places, and him actually getting applications, filling them out. And guess what? They wouldn't call him back, Donnie, because he had a record, right? So in turn, what that looks like is it's a transformation of, okay, I'm being okay and I'm a hood hero and I'm everything, and then you fall into a role of depression, right? Like, man, I can't make it over this hump. I can't get there. So because he suffered from the substance abuse issues in the past, he self-medicated, right? He reverts back to what he knows. So he starts using, crack. He starts using Ready again. Now, mind you, he's still the great dynamic person, but, like you see that same reoccurrence, started using drugs, start robbing, wound up getting locked up, get inside, get clean, come back home, it's the same thing. So me, as an advocate of reentry services for those individuals, I have a passion for it because I feel like if my brother had that chance to be able to, for somebody to give him that chance, not only around, employment support, but if he had the consistent mental health support, right, to be able to navigate him through his depression, his anxiety, all those things that he was suffering with, and he would be able to sustain, he would be my hero today. He would be here today to continue to be, and I'm pretty sure he would lead in the field of what we have as far as mental health support. And Ben knows this. I have a cousin that is actually doing that. I don't want to, I'll leave it up to Ben to kind of share that, but I have a cousin that, man, I look up to that has gone through the same type of ups and downs, that are one of the most dynamic recovering addicts that, you could ever meet and imagine. So I'm in full support about reentry services and supports. We do a great job with that at MONSE. The mayor has actually taken the initiative to, I believe, open a re-engagement office where we will begin to service those individuals coming home. But for the most part, what I'm noticing that is those individuals that are first coming home, they're open to anything, that you would actually want them to do. So I think their role is just, if they can kind of stay hungry and, allow us to, maybe some patience for us to be able to get them in the right place and get them where they need to be, I think it'll all work out for the best.
I'm all for a black governor. I'm all for a black mayor. I'm all for black elected officials. But more than that, my interest is that having people in office who look like us, that we can begin to deal with issues that others have ignored all of our lives. All of our lives, we voted one way typically, generally speaking. And in a 9-1 Democratic city, I'm not getting political. I'm just, as you've been, from a business perspective, I'm always questioning the return on our investment, the ROI. So in a 63% black city and a 73% black and brown city with a black mayor and a black governor, I'm very warmed to hear about MONSE because I've never heard this before. And again, I think back to when Freddie Gray happened. When tragedy happens in other communities, there's this task force, there's this trauma team that goes to the school or to the neighborhood. But we don't hear that in our community. It's like black people just suck it up.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Well, we do have agencies, and I know this because I'm watching and I'm connected to, and I'm proud to say that I'm connected to MONSE, so I get a chance to see them because, to be quite honest, before a little over a year ago, Mark, I knew about MONSE, the title, but because I didn't have any, I don't want to say interest. Well, I didn't. Didn't have any interest in what they were doing. It wasn't any, we find out what we need to know. You know what I mean? So having being a partner allows me to look inside and see what they really do. That's why I went down there, Donnie, to the budget meeting, because believe me, I had a whole lot of stuff I could have did on that night rather than go down to City Hall, sit in chambers, and listen to Cohen and Green and Costello grill Mark's boss on, well, what are you guys doing with, I had a whole lot of stuff I could have did other than that. But I'm interested because I see what they do, Donnie, and you and I had some pre-show conversation about it. And I get a chance, I'm like, wow, like when I went out to Brooklyn, man, and I stopped calling it the Brooklyn shooting. Whenever I talk about Brooklyn, I use the term, this is just me, right? In my recovery, I learned some things. I use the term Brooklyn incident because the actual shooting only took a few moments, but the reverberating effect of the shooting has caused some things to happen so we don't classify that. So I just call the whole thing the Brooklyn incident. That's just me, right? So that incident caused a lot of things that are very prominent and that you can see right away, right? And just like anything with PTSD, there's a lot of situations that Mark's group probably knows more than most, some PTSD with a lot of those kids that were out there or that heard the story in school the next few days. That has caused an effect that a lot of us can't see right now. I guarantee it. But measurably, it's going to show itself if that child or those children are able to deal with the information that they got or the sight that they saw, because there was blood out there for a little while and had to get cleaned up. So those are things that will come, that will be seen in some measure of time. So that's why that meeting and going down there and see if the city council recognizes that agency for what they really do. It was important to me to see that, Donnie. That's why I spent the 2 hours and 22 minutes down there, because I wanted to make sure, and I was ready to stand up there and say, listen, I work with these guys. You need to not cut one dime from their budget because they really need more money. You know what I mean?
But I would think they also need maybe some exposure. So here's a question for you, Mark. Do any city council people visit your sites? Do they ever see firsthand the work that you do?
Man, let me tell you, we have.
And if so, who?
Yeah, we have great relationships with Z Cohen, right?
Yeah.
Maybe one of the most engaging and interactive council people. Mark Conway, we have a great relationship, great rapport with. Councilwoman Porter. I'm trying to think of Councilman Glover. Trying to think of, there's a few more.
I live in West Baltimore. We have James Torrance, and we also have John Bullock.
Yes, James Torrance is fully engaged with us. Bullock is to an extent. Like I said, every council person has, engaged us one way or the other. I can't say that, you get what I'm saying, it's done, but I do, there are several of them that, kind of are more interactive than others. But
of course,
yeah, every council person, yes, every council person engages with us in some manner. Yes.
Now, Vin, you bring up another important point, that voting is only a part of the political process. We have to do more than just pull the lever in November for Biden or whoever we're going to vote for. But we also need to know 396-3100. That's the city's number. We need to also know where City Hall is when these budget meetings are. We have to know our council person's phone number,
That's a great point.
the council president's phone number, the mayor's phone number, how to reach out, how to advocate for our own communities, because nobody's going to do for us what we can and should do for ourselves. Any thoughts on that, Mark?
No, absolutely. And one thing I can say about, my mayor, my leader is, I have gotten phone calls where, individuals, that he's given individuals phone number directly, right, for them to reach out for services and support. So if you come across our mayor, you have an issue, you know, more than likely he's going to reach out to MONSE or someone in MONSE, right, to be able to say, hey, this person needs assistance, whether it's funeral expenses, whether it's, you know, supports around relocation, safety, whatever it is. You know, our Mayor Scott is going to sit up there and say, hey, listen, call this person and make sure that they get you squared away. People don't even realize that he advocated for one young lady to actually, she was involved in a type of trauma. I don't want to get too much into it, but she was involved in a certain amount of trauma in the city, and he got involved, got her directly connected to me. This young lady just actually got her phlebotomy certification. She actually works with one of our partner agencies, Be More Medical Center, that actually gave her the certification. She learned a certification for phlebotomy, got her clinicals from John Hopkins, and I believe she just started over at John Hopkins just now, based off of, you know, our mayor saying, hey, look, you know, make sure you contact this agency. They're going to make sure that you know, you get to where, you know, you need to be. So that means a lot too. So, you know, again, we try to find a way to answer as many constituent concerns and calls as we possibly can. It's tough because we're a small organization, but, you know, we try to do our best, Donnie.
So how can people get in touch with you, Mark?
So there is a...
we got the website. We're posting that now, monse.baltimorecity.gov.
Absolutely. And also you have a website, MONSE Victim Services. What I'll do is I will make sure that they can actually start with the website that you actually just put up, because that will redirect any concerns or any needs directly to us. But I'll make sure that you will get the information for our victim services link as well.
So, Mark, any final thoughts as we go into a hot weekend? It was brought to my attention this week. You know, I was asked, why are our young people going down to Fells Point? Why are young people going to East Harbor? And I simply said, if we put resources in the community, these kids would have something to do in our own communities. But quite often, and the mayor cannot reverse over 110, 115 years of segregation in 5 minutes. But nor can he normalize treating us as human beings amidst a broader culture that's laced with institutional racism. Your thoughts?
Yeah, that's you know, again, like when you think about, you know, how the systemic racism has affected our race for the longest time. Like, we know that there are limited resources for these young people. However, you know, having a mayor, right, of, you know, the caliber that we have, and having agencies that are invested and ingrained in our city, what people don't know is that the mayor has worked alongside with the Mayor's Office of Children and Family Success, as well as Mayor's Office of African American Engagement, as well as MONSE, to put in some other agency, Parks and Recs as well. I can't leave out Parks and Recs, they have been phenomenal in engagement as well. But there have been a number of different events that have been set up throughout the summer, right? Almost every rec center in most of these communities are open with available activities, resources, or whatever have you. The thing, Donnie, is that, you know, right now, the trend of going to the harbor and going to the Fells Point, or the going to the harbor and going to Fells Point right now for young people is a trend, right? It's like a spot. So even though these other resources are available, the mayor has pool parties that are happening, I believe, once or twice a month. Every rec center, he has Midnight Madness basketball happening. He has basketball. You have the Commissioners League that is happening. So he's doing a phenomenal job putting all these resources in the communities. However, the interest of the young people is not, you know, to go and do that. They are more interested in, I want to hang out with my friends, right? And at the most popular hangout spot. So that's where the culture is kind of shifting around the interest of the resources, or the interest of the things that are happening in the community. Right?
I got to get this one last question in about the role of fathers. We're going into Father's Day weekend. Happy Father's Day to everyone out there, including you. I got to ask you about the role of the men in the community. And we, our, us comes to mind, but I'll let you answer.
Absolutely. We Are Us. I mean, you couldn't follow a better model than what We Are Us is doing, which is why Ben and I are so invested in those brothers, right? And even having them start to coordinate trainings, right, for fathers to actually come up and see how they can play a different role. Because what people fail to realize is that it may just be they may not know how to engage in the community and what ways to do it. So We Are Us have been phenomenal in setting trainings, right, for fathers to come up and be a part and learn, hey, this is how you can be engaged. You know, you can walk with us, or even exposing, you know, some of our young people to jobs. Maybe you can open up doors for employment. We have a plethora of black men, and not just black men, just men being engaged with We Are Us that are in positions where they can actually turn around and help one or two other people progress. Right?
I'm impressed, Mark, with the white men who joined that group.
Yeah,
I'm impressed.
Dr. Lee, yeah, man. Phil Leaf, man, he's my guy. Jack just on the ground, boots on the ground, man. I can't speak more highly of him. So like I said, I don't want to just say black men, but, you know, all men that are involved in this movement. So that's how we can do it. You know, just We Are Us. Make sure that, you know, We Are Us they're open to have you come up and be trained on how you can be more engaged in your child's life, in the community, to actually make a difference.
A shout out to Dr. Andre Bunley, to Corey Barnes, Bishop Kevia Elliott, and Andrew Knox Muhammad.
Yeah.
There you have been another powerful show.
Mark, I can't thank you enough, brother. I know you on your way to get your son, man, and I appreciate you taking the time, you know, to be on this show and be engaged and give the content, because a lot of people, and Donnie said this early on, he wasn't even fully aware of what MONSE does, and I thought it was a great opportunity to share with not just him, but the broader community what MONSE does and how much we need MONSE to stay in place and to even have greater resources attached to him. So thank you, bro.
And I want to tell you that Yogi in Sandtown, we love him. He does a great job working with our Sandtown Winchester collective. Please keep him there. Please support him.
Man, you know, Yogi is my guy, man. Yogi was a mentor for me, and I can't say mentor because he's not that much older than me, but he was my big homie coming up over West Baltimore, Jack, and seeing him move and being as popular as he was, but for him to still be a good guy, he didn't have to be, you know, a bad guy to be popular, right? He was a great guy and was still popular and still had a mass amount of influence, and he was somebody that I looked up to. Ironically, when I talk about, you know, some people that direct you on that right path, yeah, man, that's my guy. That's one of my hearts.
You know, Mark, it also comes to mind as while we all grew up in an urban environment, and you talked about the fence, being on the fence, how you could go either one of us could have went left or right. Big ups to those who were in the game but didn't really welcome us into the game.
Absolutely. Wouldn't even allow us, Donnie. Wouldn't even allow me. That could be a whole nother show, man, about how we engaged. And I was mushed. Man, if you don't get out my face, you know this ain't for you. Mushed. Yeah.
Real talk.
Hey, Donnie, I gotta leave. I gotta leave you with this, and I hope Mark doesn't mind.
I'm excited now. I don't want him to go. Okay.
Listen. So Mark was called by one of the women's shelters. I'll leave the name off. It's not important. He was called by one of the women's shelters because there were women being assaulted. Now, there were women sleeping on the street in the area of the shelter, and there was a man coming in at midnight assaulting these women, right? They called Mark. Mark called me. We went and met with the administrators at the shelter, and we got several of those women off the street and housed, and they've been housed and fed over the last week, a little more than a week since that meeting, man, and they're still in housing. And several of them have seen the counselor have mental health medication administered to them, and they are starting a road to recovery in the mental health, because, you know, mental health is a broad term, right? It's not just drugs and alcohol. So I wanted to applaud Mark, man, for allowing New Life to be a part of that. And I want to share that with you, Donnie, so you would have an even greater understanding of what they do, man. This all happened in 48 hours, bro.
Mark, we would like to get you on our network on a regular basis. I don't know who you have, but I will be calling you again.
Absolutely, man. I'm honored, man. You know that, Ben is a brother, a true brother, and I don't call too many people brothers, but Ben is a true brother, man. And, again, I know he's a lot humble, but, we couldn't do this without him. Like this was a blessing to be able to find, this partnership so that we can discuss not only supports around, mental health and substance abuse, but also transitional housing as well. And some of these, and Ben, I tell him all the time, he needs to be able to talk about some of the success stories because there are families that we got connected down there that, had turned around and they went from being homeless to finding employment and about to move into their own place, right? Based on all of our collective supports, collaborating. Right. That's what true collaboration should look like. Yes.
Good deal. Gentlemen, thank you for your time. It's been a beautiful show.
Absolutely. Thank you, bro.
And we'll be back Monday at 12 noon.
Yes, sir.
Peace.